This week, we're taking a listener request from a dear friend, Brad of Uncle Kim's. Hold on.
Oh, wait, I forgot to do something.
What?
Sync.
We're videotaping for the first time, guys. And listen, so far it's kind of a disaster. There's a lot of garbage truck banging. There's these people with their dogs outside. We might be destroying our laptop with too many things. Nick is really stressed out. I'm afraid of what my jowls look like on camera. So, listen, this is the first of many things that will become increasingly more successful over time.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start again.
Are you looking at, when you're doing that, Muriel, are you looking into the screen
I'm looking
or into the camera?
at myself in the screen. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah, okay, good. All right.
Wherever you are.
This is us at our least cool by far. Okay.
This week, we're taking a listener request from a dear friend, Brad of Kim's Uncle Pizza.
Hell yeah.
In Westmont, Illinois. He requested a Chicago classic, Nathan, Leopold, and Richard Loeb, and The Perfect Murder. We're doing this sucker in 2 parts because this is already very overwhelming. And like I said, I already wrote the script. Another fun thing, we're video recording for the first time. So hold on to your butts.
Yeah, hell yeah. Okay, and this is the first episode of season 3 of Muriel's Murders. Why is it season 3? No real reason. We just decided it was
video, man.
Time. You know what I mean? Yeah, so find us on YouTube. We're going to be posting clips to Instagram and whatever other social media apps still exist. Just type in Muriel's Murders, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Just do whatever you do on social media, you know? We really do need to shout out some new Patreon supporters. You all are keeping us alive and thriving. Rachel W. is a big-time MVP, not to mention Aaron T., Judith, Devin B., Myranda, Megan, Jay, Kiyama, Lauren, and Amanda. Woo! Amanda P. increased her pledge through the roof. Thank you, one and all. You guys are amazing. Thanks to everyone who subscribes through Spotify, and thank you everyone who signed up for our free Substack. Substack, baby, that's the new hip way to get our new episodes emailed to you directly.
It's the new Facebook. I'm still looking at myself.
All right. Oh, wait. Sorry. This was a question. Are there links to these sites in the show notes of this episode? You bet your sweet ass there are. Hit us up. We love you.
All right. So for this episode, I used mostly the book Murder Among Friends by Candace Fleming, which was really, really awesome. And then the documentary The Perfect Crime, which is a part of the American Experience film series for PBS. You know, guys, this is an old-timey crime. So I also read a lot of like newspaper articles. There's some conflicting information because this case is like 100 years old. So don't come at me if I say something wrong. All right. This is a true story involving murder, violence, drugs, adult themes, etc. So if any listeners are like Nick and they don't want to hear about those kind of things, please consider listening to a different podcast.
And if this is your first time listening to Muriel's Murders, welcome to the family. We love having you here. We do joke about this kind of subject matter because that's how we get through the world. And sometimes we do curse. But if you hate those two things, please turn us off and do something different with your life.
All right, Nikki, are you ready to hear this story?
No.
Okay. Let's get started.
I don't even know how we're going to work the theme song into this video thing yet. So I think just start.
All right, I'm going to start.
Yeah. And stop looking at the camera.
I can't help it. And I'm making so many hand gestures.
So you're distracting yourself. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Yeah.
Just looking at my jowls. All right. Oh, I want to also share my top thing on the very top of my script for this.
Yeah.
Is I wrote myself a note. It says, it's going to be funny if I keep saying the perfect crime. So remember that.
Okay. So yeah, if she's doing that, it's because she told herself it would be funny. Okay.
The neighborhood of Kenwood is on the south side of Chicago in Illinois. It has a long history, was once one of the most affluent areas in Chicago. Barack Obama even has a house there.
Okay.
I'm having trouble with my eyeline. I'm so sorry.
We've heard of Barack Obama. Okay, we get it. It's nice.
Right. So back in the early 1900s, 2 boys were born into millionaire families and raised in their respective family mansions in Kenwood, just 2 blocks away from each other. Nathan Leopold Jr. was born first in the winter of 1908. The Leopold family would take a few years to move to Kenwood. So Nathan started his life in a mansion on Michigan Avenue. His dad, Nathan Sr., was one of the richest men in Chicago at the time. He made his money in shipping and manufacturing paper goods. And the Leopold family was worth about $4.5 million at the time Nathan started college. So around $71 million in today's money.
Paper goods.
I know.
It's just like doing like to-go bags for restaurants and little thank you cards and shit.
Yeah, they did a lot of letter writing back there. And like newspapers, actually.
Yeah.
We're not going to get too far into that, but like this is the era of, you know, Chicago had like 100 newspapers and everybody
Right,
just
of course.
voraciously.
No, my dumbass 2025 brain was just like, oh, the things they put DoorDash in. The receipt that they print out that's 12 miles long at CVS. Yeah, books, newspapers.
Things people, you know, because we used to read a lot more.
And write and things. Sure. That kind of paper.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Nathan's dad was so influential in Chicago when young Nathan took an interest in birding, like bird watching, at the tender age of 5. Nathan Sr. petitioned City Hall to issue his son, a gun license. See, Nathan Jr. liked to watch birds, but he also liked to shoot birds afterwards.
His dad was like, we got to make this legal, kid.
Yeah. Nathan Sr. easily won that battle with City Hall. And from the time Nathan Jr. was 6 years old, the people of Chicago could see him marching through the neighborhood with his rifle, shooting whatever birds interested him in the public parks. Nick, you're getting pop-up notices on this. Is that going to be in the recording?
I don't know.
Might...
I try to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I don't actually know even how to do that.
Okay, well, it's something's happening.
Does it look like it's still recording?
Yeah, it's definitely still recording.
All right,
but I mean, it might be some sort of embarrassing email.
What kind of embarrassing emails do you think I'm getting?
I mean, I don't know. It just could be like somebody being like, hey, Nick, you know, what's up?
That'd be the sickest email I've gotten in years.
All right. So where was I?
I don't know. He's shooting birds. This little boy is just like, he's like a Boy Scout with a license to kill.
Yeah, exactly. Nathan had his bird carcasses stuffed and mounted by a taxidermist. And by his early teens, his entire bedroom and his study were filled with over 3,000 dead birds.
That's a body count. That's intense. 3,000.
Just think, so you're picturing what this kid's like, you know?
I went into some antique store and they had like 2 birds in a cage. And I was like, that's so many birds. You know?
Yeah. As was the custom then, and sometimes now, among those with Kim Kardashian money, the Leopolds did not personally raise their 3 boys. Instead, they entrusted them to governesses, which I guess are actually still a thing even today. It's sort of an education-focused nanny for older kids, like a shaper of tender, potential-filled scions, right?
Okay, so it's like Mary Poppins, but they're a governor?
No. It's like somebody who, if you had like a tutor who also chose, you know, helped develop your extracurriculars and checked your homework and then chose like your accelerated programs.
It's just a parent.
It's kind of a parent, but dedicated specifically to education. Why are you fighting me?
I'm not fighting. I just am like...
I feel like I'm giving you a very distinct thing. It's not Mary Poppins.
Okay.
It's not a parent. It's a governess.
Sorry. Didn't realize it was such a touchy subject.
All right. I'm trying my best to do about 50 things right now. So only ask like good questions.
Deal. I have to make sure we're still recording. Okay, I think we are.
Okay, great. So for Nathan Leopold, his governesses were pretty much all he had. Nathan's dad was busy with business things, and his mom, Florence, was chronically ill with kidney issues she developed during her pregnancy with Nathan. And also his brothers were all far older than him. So Nathan, the lonely youngest kid, was affectionately nicknamed Babe by the family who largely ignored him.
Okay.
The Leopolds were Jewish immigrants from Germany, but his first governess was a Roman Catholic. And his earliest memories were the bloody, violent stories she used to tell him about the different Catholic saints being skinned alive and hacked to death or whatever. But he had no frame of reference for that, right?
Yeah, it's just basically his own personal true crime podcast.
Right. So it was like the 1910 version of a kindergartner sneaking out to see Scream 3 or Total Recall or something.
Okay.
But Nathan was actually kind of there for it. He was into it. He drew pictures of the bloody crucifixions when he wasn't shooting birds.
Yeah, that's kind of go hand in hand. I get it. Yeah.
And school was just as baffling and horrifying for young Nathan as the murders of saints. Nathan was an extremely gifted kid. Apparently, he started speaking at 4.5 months, which, according to the internet, isn't as impossible as I thought it was. It looks like that can actually be true, or at least, like, I saw a couple videos. I was like, is that real? But apparently, it's true.
Yeah, I can promise you, if there's some parents out there whose 4.5-month-old is speaking, they're gonna put him online. Like, we're starting a YouTube channel, baby.
Anyway, his parents didn't really care where he went to school. They weren't really paying attention to him. And it seems like his governess was more concerned with recounting the deaths of saints. So Nathan just ended up going to a Chicago public school a few blocks away from their mansion. As a young boy, Nathan was by far the most wealthy kid in the school. And it didn't help that he was delicately chauffeured to school each day by his governess in front of everybody. He wasn't athletic. He read instead of played at recess. And the kids made fun of Nathan. They bullied him, forced him to eat grass, all the terrible things. And eventually, after 6-year-old Nathan almost killed a neighbor's servant with his rifle, his first governess had enough and she quit. And she was replaced by the governess who loomed large in Nathan's life, Matilda Vance.
Was it on purpose? What?
No, he was shooting at a bird and wasn't paying attention to what was behind it, because 6-year-olds don't really, I think, like that have a great cause and effect. Like, remember you talk about hitting Mario in the face with that can of Bondo?
I did swing a can of Bondo, which is like a can of paint, if anyone doesn't know, like a big, heavy metal can in a plastic bag. I was swinging it around. I just thought it'd be really funny if I busted my brother in the forehead, not thinking it would hurt, just thinking it would be funny. There's like boys are kind of bad at being like, this action will have this effect. I was significantly older than 6 years old at the time. I was way older.
I was going to say, I think it's like all kids, but not just boys.
Apparently boys are very dumb at that.
Well, I think they're dumb later into life, which would be a good thing, because you were like, what, 25?
No, I wasn't that old. It was middle school. I was working on a lowrider bike. I was in like 7th grade.
Wow, pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Crying after Mario's head just swells up. I'm so sorry.
My brother did the exact same to me when we were kids. He was just spinning around with this giant. You didn't put your phone on Do Not Disturb. You didn't phone calls and stuff.
I don't know how Do Not Disturb works. I thought I did, but.
It's definitely not working. All right.
Yeah.
So his governess quit. She was like, this is too much for me. And she was replaced by the governess who loomed large in Nathan's life, Matilda Vance. Now, Matilda was another, confusing figure for the boy. To adults, she was deferential, modest, hardworking. But when Nathan's parents were gone, she was a monster. So she started by pinching and slapping Nathan in ways that couldn't be seen, like wouldn't leave physical marks, and starting to force him to steal little things from other kids for no reason, just to try to make him do something.
Yeah, because she's a complete psycho.
And then she progressed to sexual abuse. So Nathan said Matilda used to force him to take baths with her and wrestle with her naked. Sometimes she'd have his middle brother Samuel stand with Nathan and undress in front of them, talk about how her body was so much hotter than their mom's body. It's just like very intense Freudian, whatever.
No, yeah, she's
Matilda
a monster, obviously, just like flexing on these little boys about how their mom isn't hot.
I mean,
and everything.
There's so much to unpack there. So Matilda was Nathan's governess for 6 years. He nicknamed her Sweetie and later told psychiatrists Sweetie fascinated him. And for a long time, Nathan considered her his mother for all intents and purposes. Around 9 years old, Nathan was still being bullied at school and abused at home by Sweetie, and he started developing an intense and vivid fantasy life. Every night, Nathan would have hours-long fantasy sessions about being a powerful slave to a king. He'd fight bad guys for the king, and then afterwards, he'd sleep at the king's feet where he was kept on a golden leash.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. That's getting in there.
As he hit puberty, Nathan developed same-sex attractions and began to replace the king in his fantasies with boys that he was attracted to in real life. And, this actually reminds me a lot of that. Oh, I'm not going to talk about that.
Well, the Australian thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Story, right?
Yeah. What's it called?
Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah, it reminds me of that too.
Yeah. We did that story a while back, and it's the two girls got sucked up into this intense blending of fantasy and reality.
Yeah.
And they say that's what led to them committing murder.
Right. And both of these two cases were highly sexualized fantasy lands also.
Yeah. Of young people and preteens and teenagers going through puberty.
Yeah.
So the same kind of age range.
Right.
When Nathan was around 12 years old, Nathan's mother, Florence, caught Sweetie smacking him around in his bedroom and fired Sweetie on the spot. And despite the abuse, Sweetie's termination sent Nathan reeling. For 6 years, he basically thought Sweetie was his mother. And then she was just gone without a word. He never saw her again.
Yeah, you get super attached,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she was basically his whole world,
right,
from the time he was 6 to the time he was 12.
Yeah, and a lot of people that get abused, that's becomes the way in which they're, they feel valuable to this person or whatever, And
that wasn't the only world-altering change that year that hit Nathan. In 1916, the Leopolds moved from downtown Chicago to the posh Kenwood neighborhood, and Nathan's life completely changed. At the time, Jewish families were barred from living in most of the exclusive Chicago neighborhoods, but Kenwood was an exception. So the Leopolds moved into their new sprawling mansion with tennis courts and fancy fountains and all that kind of stuff. And Nathan went from his rough and tumble public elementary school to the Harvard School for Boys. It didn't have anything to do with the Ivy League, but it was an excellent school filled with boys just like Nathan.
Meaning rich.
I got distracted by looking at myself. Well, okay, but not exactly like Nathan Leopold.
Okay, of course.
Turned out his personality was just as unpopular with his new peers as it was with the rowdy public school boys who used to force him to eat grass. At the Harvard School for Boys, Nathan was still the short, unibrowed, brainy outcast. And it wasn't all about the unibrow. It turns out Nathan was just really annoying. He was really smart, but condescending and obnoxious.
Yeah, we've had other cases like this where extremely rich kids just also are the mean dorky one.
Yeah, we have had cases like that. I mean, I think it runs the gamut. There's mean, dorky people.
No, of course. I'm just saying this is fitting an archetype of different cases that we've done on this podcast.
Yeah.
This is kind of recognizable and so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's just stacking dead birds all around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just no friends. So eventually he resigned himself to being the strange, sarcastic bird guy and focused his child prodigy mind on his coursework. And that worked out just fine for Nathan. He learned multiple languages, studied philosophy, made ornithological breakthroughs while studying the nesting patterns of Kirtland warblers and brown-headed cowbirds in his spare time. He graduated high school in 2 years and enrolled at the University of Chicago at the age of 15.
Is he going to turn out to be a killer? I want to feel like so bad for this kid, you know?
You can. Actually, this is a really... Well, I'm not going to get so into it because that's kind of what the second episode is about. But this was actually a landmark case for psychoanalysts. So this happened about 20 years after Freud started his work, and started becoming like a sensation essentially. And so this was like one of the first cases that psychoanalysts came in and looked really at the background of these boys' lives. And, so it is actually, it's really interesting. It factors into...
So he's going to do a bunch of terrible stuff, but it's okay to be sympathetic and feel bad for him now.
I'm very surprised you didn't get that from the introduction.
I just needed to make sure because I have all this sympathy and empathy for this kid. I'm feeling so bad for him,
Yeah, I mean, and he is a kid.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
at
a
this
child.
point,
it's okay to feel
he's
really
15.
sad for him right now. Okay, okay.
All right, so Richard Loeb, Nathan's neighbor, was decidedly not a child prodigy, but on the cusp of the roaring 20s, he also found himself a 15-year-old freshman at the University of Chicago. So Richard Loeb was born 6 months after Nathan Leopold, the second to youngest out of 4 boys born to millionaire Albert Henry Loeb. And Albert was the vice president of Sears and Roebuck. And when 15-year-old Dickie started up at the University of Chicago, his father was worth around $10 million, so just under $160 million in today's money. And his family owned a summer estate in Michigan and a mansion 2 blocks from Nathan Leopold's family home in Kenwood. Their property had a 9-hole golf course, a greenhouse, tennis courts, and a full-time staff of cooks, servants, chauffeurs, gardeners, whatever.
So it's like their house is basically a neighborhood.
Oh, I didn't. Was that a question?
No, I'm just saying they own a big ass plot of land and they have like a community center and a whole.
In Kenwood, like the estates, particularly in this area of Kenwood, were all.
They all had their own golf
insane,
courses and stuff. Yeah, damn.
Richard Loeb had started high school at the age of 12 and graduated at the age of 14 before enrolling at Chicago University. But Richard's academic success was largely due to a powerful and relentless governess who had brutally controlled Richard's life from the age of 4. Mrs. Struthers poured her entire being into molding Richard. She controlled every aspect of his life. He wasn't allowed to play, only study. She asked his teachers for extra work. She controlled what he read, only the classics, no brain-rotting, age-appropriate children's books, or comic books, or anything like that.
No TikTok.
And under the squeezing vice grip of his ambitious governess, Richard learned how to live a double life. That's how he survived. So Richard lied constantly about everything. He started lying as a little boy and over time became an excellent, charming liar, a flawless manipulator. He'd lie to get what he wanted, or he'd just lie for whatever reason or no reason at all. Richard said he never felt bad about it. It was second nature. And he said by the time he was 10, he had developed an intense fantasy world, just like Nathan. Except he wasn't a powerful, servant of a king in his dreams or a slave. Richard, in his fantasy world, was a master criminal who would periodically be caught, stripped naked, and violently whipped in his jail cell in front of crowds of people. And that was something he would spend hours every night sort of in that world.
Yeah.
And his fantasies bled out into real life too. When he could escape Miss Struthers, Richard would sneak out and spend hours pretending he was the leader of a notorious criminal gang. He would stalk his neighbors, what he called shadowing, and throw hand signals to his imaginary army, commanding them to take cover or get ready for an ambush. The people of Kenwood would often see the millionaire's strange son wilding out in public. The 10-year-old stalking people and hiding behind trees and wildly waving his arms, right?
It's the same neighborhood as a kid walking around with a gun shooting.
He was younger, so that was actually in downtown Chicago. Because he moved to the...
Oh, right. He was living on Michigan Avenue.
Yeah, right. But yeah.
Like shooting the pigeons.
But they're both like well-known in their neighborhoods.
Yeah,
Richard didn't care what anyone thought about him. He thrived in his alternate reality. Eventually, though, fantasy wasn't enough for Richard. He wanted to actually be a criminal. So he started stealing anything he could get his hands on, little things all the time. Meanwhile, oblivious to Richard's emerging personality disorder, his governess was just jam-jobbing Richard through high school. His teachers were like, yeah, I guess you can force him through the coursework fast, but he's not like actually ready for college. He's not a genius. He's just overworked. He's still a little ass kid and he's acting like one. But the Loebs deferred to their governess, and Miss Struthers had the final word. Richard was smashed through high school before he even hit puberty.
So what, these governesses are just like, oh, I'm going to earn my money, just like go through these kids and on to the next family. They're just
everybody has, I think they all have different styles, right? But like...
Well, there seems to be a pretty solid, pattern going through.
No, man.
What? Hella hardcore and crazy?
These guys in particular are very crazy.
Okay, we're not saying all governesses were insane maniacs.
I'm saying Nathan, right, was like just didn't care about his education at all. She was just on her crazy trip, abusive thing. Like the only reason why Nathan got there is because he actually was a child prodigy.
Right. Okay.
And that's the difference between him and Richard.
Got it. Yeah.
Richard got there, but that's from just somebody forcing you through the meat grinder.
Okay, I hear it.
So Richard sorry, I had to catch up because I'm so distracted.
There's so much going on.
Richard managed to pass the college entrance exams for the University of Chicago, which is a great school. But that's where the glory ended. His freshman year, the teen couldn't handle the coursework, and his grades dropped down to mostly C's, where they stayed. Once their son enrolled in college, though, the Loebs considered Richard to be fully launched, and they told Miss Struthers it was time to move on from Richard to his youngest brother. Miss Struthers had a bit of an extinction burst with that. She was fully, passionately, somewhat weirdly committed to Richard and no one else but Richard. She refused to work with the Loeb's younger son. And if they weren't going to let her work with Richard, she just quit on the spot. And with that, after 10 years under the thumb of Miss Struthers, 15-year-old Richard Loeb was free. Fully funded by his parents, unsupervised, and armed with a psychopathic ability to lie, Richard half-assed his classes and focused more on smoking, drinking warm gin from his flask, and manipulating college kids.
Okay.
Richard...
Cool. So now these two guys are going to meet?
Richard Loeb and Nathan Leopold officially met in 1920 when they were both 15-year-old freshmen at the University of Chicago. By then, Richard was tall and strikingly handsome. He dressed like $1 million. He was groomed like a thoroughbred racehorse and crackled with charm and electricity. And Nathan had come into his own as well, an expensive dresser, glowering from below his thick brows, wildly intelligent and really owning his insufferable nature. Now, right off the bat,
it's someone I know.
I want to know who, but don't tell me.
You.
Me?
The owning the insufferable nature part really struck a chord.
Are you kidding me?
Also, you be glowering under those brows.
I have. You want to talk about brows? Are you actually kidding me? Oh my God.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I guess in this scenario, I would be Nathan and you would be Richard. Definitely. Right off the bat, they couldn't stand each other.
Of course.
Richard Loeb thought Nathan Leopold was boring and had a terrible personality. And Nathan Leopold thought Richard was a fake liar, a show-off, and a user of people. And their classmates were totally confused when the odd couple became inseparable, ride or die best friends. Nathan and Richard's coming-of-age story played out on the backdrop of the roaring 20s in Chicago. Young flappers were terrorizing their parents with jazz music and dancing. And it was the Prohibition era in the U.S., so booze was banned. And especially in Chicago, that meant an explosion of bootleg liquor and underground speakeasies, gangs trying to control the flow of liquor, patrolled the streets with submachine guns.
Yeah.
Al Capone rose to infamy. And if you were a filthy rich 15-year-old socialite at the time, there was a lot of fun to be had.
If you can hang at all, though, it seems like, I guess the Richard could, but I can't imagine Nathan. Like,
I think money helps you hang and breeding and the fact that they, well, we'll keep going.
Okay.
Nathan Leopold had a brand spanking new cherry red Willys Knight sports car that I guess he could only use with permission. So when everyone was asleep, he'd sneak out of the mansion late at night to go pick up Richard at the Loeb mansion. And the boys would steal flasks of their father's good imported liquor because their dads were definitely still drinking.
Sure, it's scotch.
Rich people
and
were like able to do it.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to Scotland. I mean, I'm going to the liquor store in Scotland. I'll be back in 4 weeks. You want anything?
And so they would just, steal their dad's liquor and drunk drive around town. They could do anything. They gambled. They went to dance halls because, again, all this stuff's illegal, so you don't need an ID.
Right.
So as long as you have money and a car, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Sure.
So like gin joints, brothels, whatever.
Sounds pretty great.
Chicago was really fun during Prohibition.
Yeah.
There were like thousands, apparently. This is something I read, but now I can't remember where I read it. So it seems...
1,000 seems like too much.
But I'm going to say it anyway. There are thousands of speakeasies on the south side of Chicago alone.
Yeah, probably not 1,000. I mean, I guess if you just get shut down in one day and reopen,
it could be. Yeah. Nathan, for his part, just loved getting wasted. And Richard loved dancing. He loved to see how far he could freak dance on girls before they slapped him.
Oh, no.
And, Richard was incredibly popular with the ladies, but he really didn't care about sex in general. He just liked the attention and the opportunity to sexually manipulate people. Nathan, on the other hand, was completely head over heels in love with his best friend, Richard. Nathan came out as gay to Richard fairly early in their relationship, and it was a big deal. Not only in terms of that being like a powerful and personal thing to share, it was dangerous. Sodomy laws criminalized certain sex acts all across the U.S. at the time. If you were openly gay in Chicago, you could be arrested on obscenity charges.
Damn.
And up until the 1970s, being homosexual was considered a mental disorder. If Nathan was outed for being gay, he risked getting expelled from school, arrested, even serious prison time. But he risked it all to share his secret with Richard.
Yeah.
So in February 1921, Richard and Nathan took a train to the Loeb estate in Michigan for a weekend with Richard's parents. And there, in their sleeper car, Nathan told Richard about his fantasies about men, that, he dated girls, but he had no sexual attraction to them. He'd been attracted to men as long as he could remember, and he was intensely attracted to Richard. And I think it's really hard to know exactly what happened in that train car. I think most of what's known about Richard and Nathan's private life comes from psychiatric evaluations and then Nathan's perspective later in life. But it sounds like Richard reciprocated Nathan's feelings in his own way, that the feeling of being admired, wanted, like the attention Nathan gave him was really erotic. And Richard didn't reject Nathan. He even shared a secret in return. Richard wasn't some normal college kid. He was a master criminal. He told Nathan all about his intense fascination with being a criminal, the petty crimes he'd committed, his criminal fantasies. And
so he's saying I have this fantasy of being a master criminal, not I am a master criminal.
No, he's saying like, this is how I came to the realization that I'm a master criminal. my fantasies, all this stuff, but I do steal, and I actually have the capacity.
So he's like, thank you for sharing this very vulnerable thing. That's like incredibly brave of you to like share with me and like really putting yourself out there. And because of that, I'm now going to raise the ante and tell you my incredibly truthful thing.
Exactly.
Oh no.
So for Nathan Leopold, that all made perfect sense. Of course, they both had an unyielding desire to operate outside the bounds of society. They were both Nietzschean supermen. So I'm going to get into this.
Nietzschean supermen.
This is a little bit of a deep cut. I'm probably in over my head, right?
Good.
And this again reminds me a lot of that Heavenly Creatures episode that we did, a few episodes ago. But basically bushy-browed Nathan wasn't just into birds, he was into philosophy too. And like any cynical 16-year-old with interest in philosophy, they didn't have the Smiths back then, right? Nathan loved the work of German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, this is a very, very oversimplified nutshell. I think Nietzsche's main thing is that God is dead. Society is a sham. Morality is just made up nonsense. Nietzsche believed, now this is one of the things that he talked about, but he believed that only a special type of person could truly understand his philosophy and live by its tenets. And he called that type of person an Übermensch, or a Superman. So basically, according to Nietzsche, the Superman is so awesome, creative, enlightened, and rare that his behavior cannot be dictated by societal laws, morals, or ethics. A regular man is basically like an animal compared to an Übermensch. Laws for regular people didn't apply to the Übermensch. And of course, Nathan concluded both he and Richard were Supermen. And as a Superman, or at least a budding Superman, Nathan's personal philosophy was, so this is getting a little deep, but basically he's like, okay, so first off, we're really awesome. So that's like the fundamental thing.
That's just our opening move.
Right. That's our opening gambit. And then Nathan is saying, knowing that his capacity is so great and that he's so awesome, he developed his own personal philosophy to dictate, his life. He called it individual hedonism. So for every act, he said he weighed the pleasure versus the pain. And if the pleasure exceeded the pain, he'd do it. He didn't care about right or wrong on any level and found the concept of good and evil entirely irrelevant. So he's explaining all this stuff to, Richard, to try to be like, this is, what we are. They're like hyping each other.
It's a lot like the Australian girls.
Yeah. And like, we're above society. We're above the laws. And because you feel like a super criminal, like I have that feeling too as my personal philosophy. I'm a hedonist, an individual hedonist,
Oh, man.
So,
I could have been so susceptible to something like that, because in some ways that's what all of us teenagers are doing. It's like, oh, you listen to the cool music.
Yeah, you want to be that
like
guy.
It's like, no, you're epic and I'm epic.
Epic.
And for the record, like I still feel that way about, like, for instance, all the listeners of Muriel's Murders. You're all Supermensches to me.
Yeah.
I love you guys. You guys are brilliant geniuses, and don't let these haters keep you down ever. You rise above.
Both boys were just in this sleeper car, jacked up on the pleasure of their specialness, both wonderkin, because they were, right? They were these 15-year-old freshmen at Chicago University.
One of them shouldn't even be there also.
Blasting through curriculum years faster than their peers, both sons of millionaires, both unafraid, reckless patrons of speakeasies. Richard, the master criminal, and Nathan, the brilliant hedonist. And that night on the train, Nathan and Richard had sex for the first time. Richard later said that the experience gave him more pleasure than he had ever experienced in his life. It became his fixation.
Was that their virginity? Because you said they were going to brothels and stuff.
I don't think that was their... I don't know. But I think definitely not for Richard. I don't know about Nathan.
Yeah, because I would also say, like, usually you can usually do better than after your first time. Like, virginity is not like the ultimate greatest sensation in the whole world. You know what I'm saying?
I'm glad you clarified that for everybody.
I don't know.
I just realized I think I've been doing this whole thing with my head tucked back, and it's really... I wish I could see what I look like when I'm reading this. I think I look insane.
Well, I can only see your eyes because the thing you're reading off of covers every bit of your entire face except for just your eyes. So you look like you're just sneaky and like peering over a fence.
Well, I think I'm doing this. All right. If you want to know what I did, you're going to have to watch the video. When the boys came back to Chicago, Richard decided he wanted to transfer out of the University of Chicago. He didn't want to live with his parents anymore. He wanted freedom and also... Sorry, I thought I got in the wrong place. I'm back. And also, he knew the University of Michigan was a heavy party school. Now, Nathan couldn't stand the idea of being away from Richard, so he followed him, and both boys made plans to transfer in the fall of 1921. They spent the summer of 1921 at the Loeb family estate in Michigan, having sex, shooting birds, getting drunk, and just overall having a ball.
Just whatever, just like if I could go back in time, you know what I mean? Besides save humanity and all the smart ways and all this stuff, I would just be like, hey guys, just keep doing this. Like I didn't even get, Muriel didn't even tell me how your story ends. I don't even know what kind of killing you end up doing, but just stay here.
Yeah, just be rich and have fun and
bone each other and go shooting, which you know is fine, I guess, and just like stay here. This is your paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. In the fall, the boys moved into a shared apartment together, but the relationship was short-lived. Nathan was more intense about the relationship than Richard. He was the clingier one. There were rumors about the boys, rumors that they were more than friends. Richard cooled way down. He avoided Nathan, even when they were alone in the apartment. And Nathan was intensely disliked on campus, walking around like a magnanimous duke, speaking in the third person and correcting people's grammar. And Richard was just embarrassed by Nathan and repelled by Nathan's attachment to him. That fall, Richard rushed a fraternity and it went well. He was told, though, that he could only join if he just dumped Nathan Leopold altogether. They didn't want to see them together. They didn't
have
want
that
him
nerdy friend around.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was that. Just a few weeks into the school year, Richard cut all ties with Nathan and moved out of their apartment and into this new fraternity. In the middle of this fresh heartbreak, Nathan's chronically ill mother, Florence, died, and Nathan just retreated into himself and got very dark.
Yeah.
Eventually, Nathan left the University of Michigan and returned to the University of Chicago. And there, he just threw himself into his work. He was an academic star, so undisputedly impressive. He earned some friends in upper academic circles and clubs. His intelligence became a sort of workaround to his personality. And after that, the boys lost touch. Back in Michigan, Richard Loeb spiraled out. He was drunk most of the time, had a reputation among his frat brothers for being a liar and a thief. He was obsessed with true crime and would only talk about that or read newspaper articles out loud to bored frat boys. He took mostly easy classes and made mediocre grades, but graduated on time by the skin of his teeth. In 1923, Richard Loeb, at the age of 17, became the youngest person to graduate from the University of Michigan. Meanwhile, Nathan Leopold had already finished his undergraduate degree and was studying law at the University of Chicago with a spot secured at Harvard Law School for the fall of 1923. After graduating from University of Michigan, Richard Loeb was adrift. He was afraid his parents would cut him off financially if he didn't do something with his time, so he re-enrolled at the University of Chicago and signed up for some graduate-level history classes. Back in Chicago, Nathan and Richard reunited. They got back to their usual antics, drunk driving and speakeasies, but there was tension this time around. Nathan wanted to go back to the summer of 1921, back to the full-blown sexual relationship, and he was frustrated at this in-between thing that they were doing. And Richard was caught between loving the attention and devotion of Nathan and just being straight up annoyed by Nathan's neediness. And eventually Richard came up with a solution to bleed the messy humanness out of the situation. Something that seems sort of psychopath-esque.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't. Am I surprised that he didn't have like a really nuanced, mature way to solve this issue?
Just let's take the humanness out of it. So Richard had a mutually beneficial proposal. If Nathan did crimes with Richard, Richard would have sex for Nathan. Richard would have sex with Nathan.
But also kind of for him.
Richard didn't seem to care too much about the actual sex, but he was intoxicated by the chance to be a master criminal with a devoted follower. So it was the boy with the king of thieves fantasy crashing up against the boy who fantasized serving a king who kept him on the end of a golden leash.
Yep. I mean, damn, man. It's just like they're so close to probably like heaven on earth, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all just trying to like meet the person that fills each other's cracks. Sorry, you get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? We're all broken in these certain ways, and we're just trying to find the right person to like mesh together. Like you complete me or whatever the corny ass shit is. But like that's true, right?
Yeah.
And these are two people with these very, I'm gonna call them bizarre, no judgment, and whatever fantasies that just like the equation works out perfect.
Yeah.
It's like almost there. I don't know what's going to
did.
happen, but it's almost there. You guys almost did it.
Well, the weird thing is they did do it, and that is that is the terrible thing. Just because you fit together perfectly and you get there doesn't mean the product is going to be perfect.
I guess that part's true too. I guess that part is true too. That is true too.
All right. So there were specific terms of the deal. Now, I can't remember the specific details. It's kind of irrelevant. But it was something like 3 sex sessions up front during a bit of a crime spree, and then weekly sessions in exchange for weekly crimes, something like that. And the deal had a time limit. Nathan Leopold was leaving for a grand tour of Europe on June 11th and then heading to Harvard afterwards. So June 11th, 1924 was the termination date of their agreement. Now that the boundaries were set, it was time to get back to fun. Swigging warm gin out of flasks and flying down dark Chicago streets in Nathan's Red Willie's night. With Richard at the helm, they slowly ramped up their crimes. The boys stole cars and went joyriding. They started burglarizing their neighbors in Kenwood, robbing their parents' friends' wine cellars. Richard loaded the back of Nathan's Roadster with bricks, and the pair drove down to different lovers' lanes, like places where couples park to make out and get freaky. And the boys would sneak up in the dark to the parked cars and chuck bricks through their windshields, just, shattering glass and screaming. They went on
it's the worst.
They went
it
on
makes me want to slap them.
They went on an arson spree next.
Also
they
bad.
would light buildings on fire, run home and change, and then come back around to stand in the back of the crowd, elbowing people like, "Oh, wow, what happened here? Oh, boy, what a fire!" Like, acting like they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. Okay, so they're the worst.
Eventually, the boys came to the inevitable conclusion they needed to take this as far as it could go. They decided to commit the perfect crime, to kidnap and kill without getting caught. This was great for Richard. There was blood in the water now, and he was dying to push this crime spree as far as it would go. And for Nathan, the idea of committing the perfect crime fit perfectly into the Ubermensch framework. If they pulled off the perfect crime, it would be proof that they were fully above society's laws. So now, at their supposed zenith of their power, the boys knew they would never be caught. Murder and kidnapping were both capital offenses in Illinois, so they figured they'd go all in. An elaborate, genius-level ransom scheme that would result in a murder regardless of payment. They spent months planning the murder and set the date for May 21st, 1924, just a couple weeks before Nathan's European vacation. Initially, they tried to brainstorm all these potential victims, but they eliminated them one by one, mostly because they realized they didn't care who died. They just wanted someone small and easy to catch. They wanted a kid from a wealthy family, someone who could actually pay the ransom, and they decided against abducting a girl. In general, wealthy girls they thought were too closely chaperoned. So they decided the easiest thing to do was abduct a kid from their neighborhood school, Harvard School for Boys. And in fact, they committed the bulk of their murder within the 2 blocks between their family homes. The perfect crime.
Yeah, you were right, Muriel. That was funny. Nailed it.
The ransom plan was elaborate, involving a series of phone calls from public phones, multiple ransom notes leading to a series of clues. I don't know. Does it cut away from you when I'm talking, or are you editing it?
I'm not editing. No, I don't know. We're just recording both video feeds.
Well, if you can't see it, Nick is shaking his head so hard, but it's quiet, so I don't know if you can see what's going on.
I mean, it's just this thing with the ransom notes. People like these people that try to do these like elaborate ransom plans with like, you're going to leave a message in a newspaper and I'm going to, send a smoke signal and all. It's just like the person doing the thing 9 times out of 10 times, like the criminal setting it up. It's just they're just dumb. So it's like so complicated that it is stupid.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of cases where people make it too complicated.
They're just like, I won't get caught. It's like, yeah, no one even knows what this is.
Yeah. So,
that's why I'm shaking my head.
It's very funny. And then at the end, so this is how complicated it was. Multiple clues, this whole series of clues. And at the end, it would end with the victim's family throwing a bag of money off a moving train. So the boys had decided it was too obvious to drive Nathan's red roadster in the commission of a murder just blocks away from their homes. So they decided to go to the local rent-a-car to hire a neutral-colored Willys Night sedan. And in order to do that, they painstakingly created a false identity, complete with a bank account and a temporary residency at a local hotel. In the end, Nathan Leopold had letters, a glowing reference, and a bank book, all proving the 19-year-old was Morton D. Ballard, traveling salesman from Peoria, Illinois.
The perfect crime.
I don't know what they can see, what they can't see. All right. In the days leading up to the murder, the boys casually bought all their supplies at local shops and pharmacies where they were easily identified. A chisel, rope, hydrochloric acid, stationery from the ransom notes, which Nathan typed up on his own personal typewriter. And they decided the best place to hide the body was in a culvert in a nature preserve near Lake Michigan, where Nathan went birding almost every weekend. Okay. Again,
the perfect crime.
Perfect crime.
I'm pretending what culvert is because I think you already told me what it was on one of these episodes.
Oh, it's fine. I forget about it all the time. It's like, I think it's this structure that I guess one lake is bigger than the other lake in this nature preserve. And so it's a way of controlling the overflow of the bigger lake. So it's basically like
a dam or something.
No, it's like a big pipe that you can fit a body in. Like a big pipe. Okay. That would kind of, if it got really rainy, then like the overflow could go through the pipe into the water. So,
do you remember in so this really is the perfect crime. Carkey Park. No, I get what these are.
Like we used to climb those when we were kids. Yeah. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Usually when we do this podcast, I can pause and then Nick cuts out the pauses while I figure out where the hell I was.
But I don't know if we can do that with the
video.
I
don't think we can. I apologize.
I mean, I probably could, but I just don't know if I'm going to for this first episode.
We're going to get in the habit of it soon. And I think what we'll do is when I pause, Nick will just start talking. Yeah. Or I will stop pausing so much and be like, ba 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 ba.
This is a musical interlude.
A few days before the murder, the boys subtly tested the waters. Richard went up to a young neighborhood boy he knew, a kid named Bobby Asher, and asked him to play catch. He was like, oh, this kid's really small for his age. I know this guy. Like, my little brother is friends with him. So the older boy asked Bobby if he wanted to drive with him to Michigan for a football game on the 21st. He would drive to his house and pick him up, right? Weird, right? And giving the date of the murder away. Very slick, right? So disappointed, Bobby said, oh man, I'd love to go, but he had a dentist appointment that day and he couldn't do it.
Okay.
So Richard moved along in his low key, very slick search for a victim. 3 days before the murder, Nathan led a birding expedition in the marshland surrounding Wolf Lake, taking his group steps away from the culvert where he and Richard planned to hide the body. And then came the day, May 21st. And that's where we'll start again next episode with better recording technique.
Maybe. No promises. We're not telling the people that. We don't know what this is going to be. You're going to watch this. You're going to laugh so hard. I go like this, look at the thing, look at myself, and then try to make eye contact with the camera, but I don't know where it is. This is great. No. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. So if you're still listening, there's a very good chance that this video exists on the internet. There's also a chance that it doesn't. So maybe I'll put that in the beginning of the episode. We'll do like a little disclaimer.
No, we're putting it up. Just don't write anything shitty on the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
That's what I'm the most afraid of. They're like, girl, what is up with those chows?
All right, everyone. We want to thank you for listening to Muriel's Murders.
Also I've been doing this the whole time. Yes, thank you for listening.
Okay. Muriel did all the research, the writing. She did the hosting. I spent so long trying to set up a goddamn video studio in our closet. It was way too small and very bad. So we just did it in our living room. If you guys saw the wires, you'd be like, how dare you consider this something that you would even call legitimate. Find us on social media.
We're not on there.
No, this is we're gonna make clips out of these videos and put them online. No, we're saying it's a good time to start following us online because we're actually going to be doing it. Find us on Substack. That's great. And shout out to Mario Castellini. He does our theme music. However, I don't know if the theme music's actually going to be in this episode.
Also, I've been drinking out of a pickle jar this entire time. I forgot. I should have had a more human vessel to drink my water.
Nah, that's cool. All right. I'm going to hit stop now, and we're going to see if I can edit this thing. And and then also, this is the main thing that we really didn't say in the beginning, unless I forgot. We're going to get part 2 up early on our Patreon and Spotify exclusive feed. So
it'll be either tomorrow or the next day, but it'll be up early. And that's our special gift to you for waiting a month for us to come back.
Yeah. All right. Season 3 off to a bang. Take care of yourself and each other. R.I.P. Jerry Springer. We love you. May the peace be with you.